I always believed that true love was simple, that when you find someone who makes you feel at home, everything else falls into place. And for a long time, I swore to myself that my marriage was exactly that, a story written with patience, with devotion, with a future. Our wedding day was magical. I smiled so much I could barely breathe. Every detail felt like it had been pulled straight from my childhood dreams. But time has a strange way of revealing what we chose not to see. 1 year later, in the quiet of an ordinary afternoon, a forgotten box at the back of the closet brought back a voice I thought I'd never hear again. A letter, a name, and a truth I wasn't ready to face. Maybe you think I'm exaggerating, but if it were you, what would you do? If this story grips you even a little, stay close and hit subscribe, because what comes next isn't just mine. It might be yours too. It started like any other Sunday, the kind where the house feels too quiet, and you get this sudden urge to clean just to feel like you're in control of something. I wasn't looking for anything really. I just wanted to organize the top shelf of our closet, the one I hadn't touched since we moved in together after the honeymoon. Up there were things from the wedding, boxes of dried flowers, leftover ribbons, the pair of flats I changed into after the ceremony, and one box I didn't recognize right away. It was a bit heavier, wrapped in the same lace from my veil. At first, I thought it was just part of the decor my mom packed up after the party. But when I opened it, something shifted in the air. There was a folded paper tucked between fabric and tulle, old, slightly yellowed, with edges that looked like they had been handled too many times. I felt a chill. I hadn't seen that handwriting in years. I knew it instantly, thin, sharp, almost rushed. My breath caught. It was hers, Isabella, my best friend since I was 11, the girl who knew all my secrets, the one who used to sleep over at my house on weekends, steal popcorn from my bowl during movies, cry with me when my dad left. The same Isabella who disappeared from my life exactly 3 days before my wedding. Without warning, without goodbye, without a single explanation. I remember calling, texting, begging for a response. She vanished. At the time, I was heartbroken, confused, but I told myself she was overwhelmed, maybe jealous, maybe couldn't handle seeing me get married before her. I told myself anything just to move on, and I did. I got married. I lived my first year as a wife, believing she had simply walked out of my life. But now here I was, holding something she'd left behind, a message she never meant for me to find, at least not back then. I stared at the paper for minutes before I could unfold it. My hands were shaking. I read the first line out loud, barely whispering. I don't know if you'll ever see this. I hope one day you do. But if you don't, at least I tried. My heart pounded in my chest. The letter was written like someone desperate to be heard. She said she hadn't meant to disappear, that everything happened too fast, that she tried to tell me something important, but that he, my husband, had made sure I wouldn't believe her. She didn't explain everything right away, just pieces, bits of nights I had forgotten, moments I'd brushed off. You remember that Wednesday I left early from your dress fitting? She wrote. He followed me, said things to me I'll never forget, said you'd never believe me if I told you what he did. I felt the blood drain from my face. I remembered that day. I remembered her leaving suddenly, looking pale. I remembered asking her what was wrong and her brushing it off. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? And I believed him too. Always. Back then, everything he said made sense. Now, nothing made sense. The more I read, the colder I felt. She wasn't accusing him of cheating. She wasn't even saying he hurt her physically. What she wrote was stranger, more subtle. She said he manipulated her, that he twisted her words, that he tried to make her look unstable to me, that he called her a liar, an attention seeker, someone trying to sabotage my happiness. And maybe the worst part, that I believed him. You chose him, she wrote, and I get it. I don't blame you, but I couldn't stay and watch. I couldn't be near you and pretend he was who you thought he was. I dropped the letter on the bed. My heart was beating so fast it hurt. I wasn't sure what I was feeling, anger, confusion, shame. I picked it back up. At the bottom, in a corner, she had written her name. Not just Isabella. She signed it like she used to when we were teens, with that little heart in the loop of the A, and something else, a date. The day before the wedding. That letter had been hidden for a whole year, and I had no idea. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the lace box in one hand, the letter in the other, And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel sure of anything. Not him, not the past, not even myself. A part of me wanted to scream. Another wanted to rip it up, pretend I never saw it. But I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unread it. I kept hearing her voice in my head, calm, broken, trying to protect me. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about that year, about him, about our story, started to crack. The letter was dirty, with light moisture stains in the corners and a deep crease in the middle, like it had been folded in a rush, stuffed somewhere dark, forgotten. But every word screamed now, screamed at me, screamed inside me. I read and reread that paper like it was the only living thing in the room. Isabella's voice took shape in my head, almost like she was sitting right in front of me, holding my hands like she used to when I cried as a teenager. Only this time, she was the one crying. In every line, there was pain, guilt, desperation. She said she tried to protect me, but what he did to her went further than she imagined. That he intimidated her, that he looked her in the eye and lied. With such conviction, she doubted her own sanity for days. She said he played with words, twisted conversations, and made her look dramatic, overly emotional, unstable. That he spoke with a calm smile, but there was poison in every sentence. And worse, she saw I was already poisoned too. That little by little, he was pulling me away from everything real. He told me she was jealous, that she wanted to compete, that she was making up stories for attention. And I blind agreed. I remember episodes that matched what she wrote. Like the time he told me, Isa has this hidden jealousy. She just doesn't see it. And I believed him. I remember feeling uncomfortable with some of her behaviors, but I never stopped to question where that discomfort came from. I absorbed everything he said like it was truth. And now, rereading that letter, I realized they weren't just words. They were traps. She described a dinner when he approached her while I was in the bathroom. She said, he leaned in slowly, looked her in the face and said, "You're going to end up pushing her away from you. Better be careful." I zapped and then leaned back like nothing had happened. That same night, I remember, she stayed quiet the whole time. After we left, I asked what was wrong, and she just said, "Nothing. I'm just tired." And I accepted it, because he was beside me, hugging me, smiling, saying she was always strange. The letter also mentioned a message she sent me, one I never received, she said. She tried to tell me everything, days before the wedding, but the message disappeared. And then something snapped inside me. I remembered a notification on my phone that popped up and disappeared before I could open it. I remember asking him if he saw what it was because we were using my phone to play music on the car's Bluetooth. And he said no, it was probably spam. But now, I doubt it. I doubt it because he was the type who always had my phone, knew my password, who claimed to care so much he monitored even what I ate. "It's care, not control," he'd say. And I believed him. My stomach turned. I started remembering other small things, things that back then seemed normal. Like him saying my mom was getting too involved in the wedding and stressing me out. Like him suggesting I spend time away from Isabella because she's dragging you down. Like him convincing me that only he knew what was best for me. The letter ended with a sentence that wouldn't leave my head. "You don't know the prison you're in until someone shows you the key." And there, alone in our room, surrounded by wedding gifts and memories of a day that now felt stained, I started to feel truly trapped. But the cruelest part was realizing I put the chains on myself. I was the one who closed my eyes. I was the one who chose to ignore the signs. And now what? Confront him? Deny it? Pretend I never read it? I still didn't know. But one thing was certain. That letter couldn't be ignored. And Isabella, the one I thought had abandoned me, might have been the only person who ever really tried to save me. I put the paper away again, but not in the back of the box. I placed it on the table, like telling myself, this exists, this is real, and it needs to be faced. He got home an hour later, kissed my forehead, asked what I was doing. I said, just organizing a few things, smiled, and pretended everything was fine. But inside, the silence was screaming, and her letter, right beside me, felt like it was burning my entire soul. In the days that followed, I felt like I was living outside my own body. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The way he spoke to me, the way he touched me, even the silences between us, all of it had changed. Or maybe I was finally hearing things with new ears, seeing things with clear eyes. I looked at him and tried to find the man I loved, the one who made me believe in promises, who made me smile at the altar. But what I saw now was a stranger, and the scariest part was knowing he had always been there. At breakfast, he'd ask if I slept well. I'd say yes, but my mind went back to the words in the letter. During conversations, I paid attention to the pauses, the tones. I started noticing little games, answers that seemed too careful, explanations that came before I even asked. Like he was always ready for an accusation. Silently, I replayed our memories and saw everything differently. I remembered the day I told him I'd ask Issa to be my bridesmaid. His smile faltered for just a second. Then he said, "Of course, if you think she'll be emotionally stable by then." I laughed awkwardly at the time, thought it was just a silly comment. Now, I see how subtle it was, how cruel. I also remembered a night when he drank too much at a dinner with friends. He talked loud, fast. When we got home, he apologized, said work was stressing him. I hugged him, forgave him. But now, thinking of the way he looked at Issa that night, how she gripped her napkin like she wanted to disappear, none of it seems normal anymore. Doubt became a constant presence, and his presence started to hurt. It hurt waking up next to him. It hurt hearing him say, "I love you," because I no longer knew who he was. And I didn't know who I had been beside him all this time. Had I been complicit without knowing? A prisoner in a story I helped write with silence? I started to distance myself, not in obvious ways. It was more subtle, like shutting the bathroom door harder, like answering without eye contact, like sleeping, turned the other way. He noticed. Of course he did. And he started acting different too. More affectionate, more present. The kind who brings flowers for no reason, who offers to help cook. But it felt like an effort to keep me in place, like he sensed something slipping. And it was, because by now, I didn't know how to go back to being who I was. And deep down, maybe I didn't want to. One night, he went to bed first. I stayed on the couch, lights off, just the street light shining through the window. And I cried. I cried with shame. Shame for doubting Isapare. Shame for abandoning a friendship of years. For a man who now felt like a shadow. I kept asking myself, did anyone else see it? Did everyone pretend not to notice? Or did I hide it so well, even from myself, that no one dared to intervene? I grabbed my phone and looked through old photos. Bride, smiles, vows, applause. So perfect. And now, so fake. I felt like my own story had been written by someone else. Like someone edited the backstage of my life, erased the ugly parts, filtered the feelings. And I accepted it. I played the role of the happy woman, the fulfilled wife, while my best friend disappeared in silence so she wouldn't hurt me even more. I curled up on the couch, hugged my knees, and wished I could go back in time. Not to change everything, just to listen more closely, to see what was right in front of me. But time doesn't go back. And now, all I can do is tell it the way it hurts, the way it frees. And if you're still here, listening to all this, it's because maybe you've felt something like this too. Maybe you believe someone who pulled you away from yourself. So please, if this made sense to you in any way, if this story stirred something in you, subscribe to the channel. Because I don't know where this will take me, but I know I don't want to go through it alone anymore. And if you want, leave a comment. Tell me what you felt. Share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Sometimes all we need is someone who listens to our letter all the way to the end. After that night, everything inside me was unsettled. The house that once felt like a sanctuary suddenly became a place filled with shadows. I kept the letter close, reading it over and over, searching for answers. But the more I read, the more questions arose. How could I have missed all the signs? How did I not see the cracks beneath the surface of what I thought was love? I began to notice things I had brushed aside before, little moments that now screamed their truth. The way he'd glance at his phone when I wasn't looking, the quick messages he deleted before I could see them, the way he grew impatient when I mentioned Isabella's name, even in passing. It was subtle at first, easy to rationalize, but now it felt like a warning siren I had ignored for too long. I remember one afternoon, sitting in the living room, scrolling through old photos on my phone, when he came in, smiling, holding a bouquet of roses. "For you," he said softly. I forced a smile, but inside, my heart was breaking. Those roses felt like a mask, a facade to hide the distance growing between us. I wanted to scream, to ask him why everything felt so wrong, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I just held the flowers, feeling their thorns prick my skin. The silence between us grew heavier. Nights that were once filled with laughter turned into cold, restless hours. I found myself lying awake, replaying conversations, trying to pinpoint when things started to unravel. Was it before the wedding? After? Or had I been blind from the very beginning? My mind was a storm of memories and doubts. I wanted to believe that things could be fixed, that love could conquer the darkness creeping into our lives. But every attempt to talk ended in silence or frustration. He would say, "You're imagining things," or "You're too sensitive," and I, desperate to hold on, would apologize for doubting him. I felt trapped in a cycle I couldn't break. One evening, I decided to visit Isabella's old apartment, the place where we used to laugh until our sides hurt, where secrets were shared and dreams were made. It was empty now, echoes of the past lingering in the rooms. I sat on the floor, clutching the letter, wishing I could hear her voice one more time. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. She cared about you. We all did. Be careful." My hands trembled as I read it. Questions flooded my mind. Who was we? What else was hidden from me? Was there someone watching over me from the shadows? I felt a mix of fear and relief. Fear because the truth seemed bigger than I could handle. Relief because I wasn't alone. That message was a lifeline. From that moment on, I started to look around differently, at friends, family, even strangers. I realized that sometimes the people who care the most are the ones who speak the loudest in silence. But there was also betrayal, people who turned their backs, who whispered behind my back, who believed his version of the story without question. That hurt almost as much as the truth itself. Slowly, I began to rebuild myself, piece by piece. I sought therapy, talked to counselors, read books on healing and self-discovery. I learned that love isn't supposed to hurt. That trust is earned, not demanded. That sometimes the hardest thing to do is to let go. But letting go didn't mean giving up. It meant choosing to live honestly, even if the path was painful. I wrote a journal every night, pouring my fears and hopes onto paper. I promised myself that one day, I would tell my story, not just for me, but for anyone who felt lost in their own love story. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to face the darkness and keep walking forward. And so here I am, still broken, still healing, but no longer silent. Sharing this with you is part of my journey. If you're listening and you feel trapped, remember, you're not alone. There is a way out, there is hope. And sometimes it starts with just one step, one breath, one truth told. The road ahead is uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I feel a flicker of light guiding me, and I'm ready to follow it wherever it leads. By the time I reached this point, I was exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained. Every day felt like a battle between holding on and letting go. I found myself questioning everything, not just the marriage, but who I was beneath all the pain and confusion. The letter, the hidden truths, the lies, it all forced me to confront parts of myself I had long buried. I realized that for so long, I had lived for others, for him, for the image of a perfect wife, for the expectations of friends and family. But now, standing alone in the quiet of our home, I faced the truth that I had almost forgotten. I needed to find myself again. There were moments of sharp clarity mixed with overwhelming fear. I wondered if I could ever trust again, if love could ever feel safe. I remembered Isabella's words in her letter, how she tried to warn me, how she hoped I'd see the truth. And yet, I had pushed her away. I had been blind to her pain and my own. Healing wasn't linear. Some days I felt hopeful, other days consumed by doubt. There were nights when I cried until I fell asleep, and mornings when I forced a smile just to get through the day. Slowly, I began to reach out to reconnect with old friends, to build a support system outside of him. I took small steps, attending therapy sessions, journaling my thoughts, and learning to listen to my own voice again. I started to understand that forgiveness wasn't about excusing what happened, but about freeing myself from the weight of anger and betrayal. I grappled with questions that didn't have easy answers. How do you forgive someone who hurt you deeply? How do you forgive yourself for not seeing it sooner? And how do you rebuild trust not just in others, but in yourself? One day, while going through a box of old photos, I found a picture of Isabella and me, laughing without a care in the world. It hit me hard, the innocence, the friendship, the connection I had lost. I realized that part of healing meant honoring those memories, not burying them. I began to speak out quietly, sharing my story in safe spaces, finding strength in vulnerability. The journey wasn't just about surviving, it was about reclaiming my power. I discovered that sometimes the most courageous act is to say no, to walk away from what harms us, even when it's hard, to set boundaries, to choose ourselves. And as I started to rebuild, I understood that this was not the end of my story. It was a painful but necessary chapter that would shape the woman I was becoming. A woman who would no longer silence her fears or doubts. A woman who would fight for her truth. A woman who would rise, despite everything. If you've ever felt lost or betrayed, I want you to know you're not alone. Healing takes time, and it's okay to take it one day at a time. One step at a time. One breath at a time. There's strength in that, and there's hope. I'm still on this path, but I'm no longer afraid to walk it, because I owe it to myself to live fully, honestly, and free. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The pain didn't disappear, but it began to change shape. The weight on my chest, once crushing, gave way to a quiet strength I didn't know I had. The truth that seemed to destroy me started to set me free. With every piece of my story I accepted, with every tear I let fall, I got closer to the woman I wanted to be, a woman of courage, truth, and light, even if marked by shadows of the past. Looking in the mirror stopped being a confrontation with what I denied and became a meeting with who I am. I relearned how to smile, not an empty smile, but one born from the heart, made of acceptance and hope. I began to allow myself happiness again, because life, with all its imperfections, is still worth living. I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. That asking for help is an act of strength, not weakness. That silence is often a scream that deserves to be heard. And stories like mine, and maybe yours, need to be told. They need to be preserved. Because every voice that falls silent is a lost memory, a pain hidden in the shadows. And I don't want anyone else to feel as alone as I did. I want us to create a space where truth can exist, where suffering turns into learning, where the past, no matter how difficult, becomes a bridge to a better future. So if you're here, listening to my story, I ask you to subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to keep these stories alive that time tries to erase, so no one else has to carry the weight of silence alone. And if you were touched, if some part of this resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment. Share your own stories, your pains, your victories. Every word is a step to break the cycle, to give voice to those who suffered in silence. And if you want to continue this journey with me, I have other stories waiting for you in the channel's playlist. Stories that speak of courage, loss, resistance, and hope. The link is in the description and also pinned in the comments. I promise, you'll find something that touches the heart, makes you think, gives you strength. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing. This is only the first page of many that we will still write together, and I couldn't be more grateful to have you by my side.